Witch Trials Weekly, Video 30, August the 5th to August the 11th, 1692. 3 men, 3 children, and 3 puppets.
Welcome to this special edition of Witch Trials Weekly. I am here by the hearth of the Witch House, which is located at 310.5 Essex Street, right here in Salem, down the road from the Salem Witch Museum. And this house once belonged to Judge Jonathan Corwin, who was one of the 8 interchangeable judges in the Court of Oyer and Terminer, and he was also one of the magistrates who oversaw the preliminary examinations. This house is open to the public. You can come by for a tour. You can either walk through on your own, or you can take a guided tour, and they have a lot of fantastic information to offer you. So please come to this wonderful historical location and embrace history for yourselves. The trials of John Willard, George Jacobs Sr., and Reverend George Burroughs happened on or around August 5th. John Willard was found guilty. Much of the evidence against him was the testimony of the afflicted, but also involved testimony from his ill and frightened relatives. The most damning bit of evidence against John Willard was most likely the death of his nephew Daniel Wilkins, supposedly at the hands of his vengeful specter. Also, the fact that John ran away when he was first accused didn't help him either. Neighbors said that he beat his wife, Mary. She, however, provided for John while he was in prison and also wrote a petition to Governor Phipps on his behalf. Neither her petition nor his protests of innocence helped him. Much of the testimony, the surviving testimony, against George Jacobs Sr. came from the afflicted, specifically from his former servant, Susanna Churchill. Neighbors, including John DeRich, also testified against him, and he, too, was found guilty. Reverend George Burroughs drew a huge crowd. Cotton Mather stayed in Boston, while his father, Increase Mather, Deodat Lawson, and Reverend John Hale from Beverly, as well as several others, went to witness this trial. It was believed that George Burroughs was the earthly leader of the devil's plot to infiltrate and destroy New England churches. George Burroughs exercised his right to challenge prospective jurors and rejected several of them. The girls seemed more tormented than usual, some of them even displaying bite marks. Burroughs said it was the devil, not he, who afflicted the girls. In the midst of all of this insanity, suddenly the girls froze as if in a trance, staring at a space between them and the Reverend George Burroughs. When they snapped out of it, they all recoiled and started screaming in horror. They were separated by the court, and when each of the girls was brought in individually, they described the same 4 ghosts. That of George Burroughs' first 2 wives, as well as Reverend Deodat Lawson's first wife and child. In addition to this terrifying and spooky occurrence, 8 of the confessors said that it was Reverend George Burroughs who had recruited them to being witches and urged them to hurt the girls. Reverend George Burroughs was short for a grown man, and he was also surprisingly strong. Stories of his remarkable strength came under scrutiny. Many neighbors also spoke of his controlling nature over his first and second wives. One of these people was Thomas Ruck, brother of George's second wife, Sarah. Supposedly, one day the 3 of them were all out strawberry picking, and George had separated from Sarah and Thomas. At this time, Sarah confided something in her brother. When George caught up with them, he supposedly knew what they were thinking and speaking about. Burroughs retorted, "My God makes known your thoughts unto me." Onlookers thought that he had separated from them and became invisible so he could spy on his wife. Burroughs' case seemed riddled with misunderstandings. His explanations sounded like weak excuses and contradictions. Because of this, although Burroughs continued to protest for his innocence, he was found guilty. George Burroughs justified the judges and jury for finding him guilty based off the testimony, but added that it was due to false witnesses. This statement bothered Reverend John Hale so much that he actually approached one of the confessors.
"You are the one that brings this man to death. If you have charged anything upon him that is not true, recall it before it be too late, while he is alive."
The woman denied lying. Captain Thomas Bradbury, whose wife Mary had been accused, wrote a copy of Robert Pike's letter and sent it here to Judge Jonathan Corwin. Pike believed the girls were being afflicted by things that they saw or spoke of, however, thought they were being deluded by false spirits. Author Marilyn K. Roach puts it succinctly, "If human sight could create illusions, so much more could the Prince of Lies." He didn't think the girls could be counted as credible witnesses because they reported on an invisible world only they could see. He also didn't think that the confessors could be trusted. Why would the devil reveal himself? What Judge Corwin thought of this letter is unfortunately unknown. Around this time, 2 grown men became afflicted. Benjamin Abbott, who had spoken out against Martha Carrier, and Lawrence Lacey, whose wife and daughter had both confessed to being witches. Perhaps he thought that by saying he was afflicted, it would protect him from being accused. On Wednesday, August 10th, 22-year-old Elizabeth Johnson Jr. was arrested. Neighbors snickered that her mother would be next. She confessed, as did Martha Carrier's 7-year-old daughter Sarah and 10-year-old son Thomas. All 3 of them said Martha Carrier had baptized them for the devil. Abigail Faulkner Sr., who may also have been examined on the 10th, spoke about the children who had either been accused or confessed, saying, "The conceit of spectre evidence as an infallible mark did too far prevail with us. Hence we so easily parted with our children when we knew nothing of their lives, to suspect them. Hence such strange breaches in families." I wonder if the multitude of confessors made the girls believe that they were truly finding witches. Perhaps a confessor made them just want to accuse more people, thinking they had made a lucky guess. Or perhaps they accused people out of a want or need to keep up this terrifying and deadly charade. The next day, these 4 Andover suspects were brought to Salem for further questioning. Abigail Faulkner maintained her innocence, but it was at this time that Elizabeth Johnson Jr. produced 3 poppets for the court. The first was a piece of birch bark. The second was 4 bits of cloth wrapped around a center of thread. Each of the 4 pieces represented one of the afflicted, and the third was 2 pieces of cloth fastened together with 3 pins. Now these poppets were meant to hurt the girls and to cause them afflictions, but there's a poppet here at the witch house which was actually supposedly used for something else. Poppets like this one, which you can find here at the witch house, were used not for harming a person, but rather for protection. This one was actually found buried in a wall of a first-period home. It's believed that poppets like this were often filled with things like fingernails and toenails and people's hair, as well as other things, and then boiled in a person's urine. Now, the reason this was done is all of these things would give this poppet the essence of a person, and if a witch or other evil spirit were to come looking for that person trying to harm them, because this poppet was covered in a person's essence, it might confuse that evil spirit, and the evil spirit would attack the poppet and not the actual physical person.
This video was produced with special permission from the author, Marilyn K. Roach, and publisher, Cooper Square Press. The Salem Witch Trials, a day-by-day chronicle of a community under siege, covers the years 1692 to 1697 in detail. It also touches briefly on important and relevant events before and after this time. We are proud to carry all of Miss Roach's books and publications in our museum store. To get a copy for your personal research and enjoyment, please visit www.salemwitchmuseum.com.